Hello and welcome to the first Cinder Shire video game devlog. I'm making a video game port of Cinder Shire. This will be a series of videos documenting the creation of this game. I plan to have a relatively solid demo out within a year. Cinder Shire is at its core a board game, but I wanted the ability to reach a wider audience, so I decided to teach myself Unity to accomplish this. Cinder Shire is a 2 to 4 player dungeon crawler where players are competing against one another to be the first to complete a gear set. As you progress through the magically shifting dungeon, you will come across powerful artifacts and deadlier foes. Each time your party enters, the dungeon learns to adapt and grows stronger. As I said before, I'm using Unity to develop this game. There's two main reasons for that. The first being that it's free up to a certain point, and the second being that if I were to want to port this over to mobile in the future, it would be pretty easy to do that. I'm not saying that mobile is the focus of this. It's definitely not the focus. But if I were to want to port it in the future, I would have that possibility, and I like having that possibility. So the main features inside the build currently are the following: the dungeon engine, path construction, and fair dice rolling. The dungeon engine is the primary thing that handles the exploration and map building aspects of the game. So one of the core mechanics is that players, when they walk up to an edge of a tile, they can interact with the wall to spend an agility token to place a new tile. Once you've interacted with the wall, the game gives you a two-sided tile that you can flip and spin, like rotate. So you have basically 8 combinations of ways you can place this thing. You can place the top tile in 4 different rotations, and then you can place the bottom tile in 4 different rotations. The reason I'm doing it like this is because this is how the board game is, and I want to stay true to how I designed the board game originally. So the board game was designed this way because of real-world limitations, and it actually creates this cool dynamic thing where it's like, it's better than, okay, the player choosing the tile that they get, because then the players would just choose some meta strategy that gets boring. If you force the players into choosing the best optimal solution, or potentially screwing over their friends or whatever with an unoptimal solution, like having this two-sided tile thing and the limitations of this, I think are good because it forces the players to be more creative with the cards that they're dealt, literally the tiles they're dealt, I guess. The second major element of the current build is the pathing. This allows the player to choose where they want to go when it would be their turn to move. So the primary way that the player is going to interact with this is they're going to go into their turn. It's going to start their turn. Then they're going to be able to construct a path along the dungeon where they can move to an endpoint eventually. And say there's like gold or a chest or an enemy along this path, the path is going to detect that, and it's going to trigger one of these events. So, for example, if the player walks over a piece of gold, when they step on that path node, the player is going to take that gold and add it to their inventory. I currently don't have gold enemies or chests set up, so that'll be something in the future, but currently this is the system for pathing. The player constructs it. The second system for pathing is the automated pathing. Now, this is partly in the construction player-created pathing. It's a subroutine in there where the player can, instead of clicking node to node to node, they can click the first node and then click a node further down where they want to eventually end, and it'll show them the automated pathing. Now, there's some bugs to this currently that will eventually need to be fixed, but it works fairly good within medium range distances, small to medium range. So a large range would be 14 tiles, which is actually the maximum amount of moves a player could potentially get ever in the game. So I'm not too concerned with most of these bugs because, first off, the player is primarily not going to be interacting with the system, and secondly, this is a thing that can be changed in the player's construction when they do interact with it. So say you make a selection of a point where you want to go, and you don't like the path the auto generator constructed for you. All you have to do is click backwards on the path to a node that you do like, and then start constructing from there, and then you can choose your end node again and see what the auto constructed path was. So there's a lot of player involvement with the movement of this, because you might want to avoid an enemy by going strictly around them rather than a path that would go next to them, because if you're adjacent to an enemy, that is what would initiate combat. So you may want to avoid combat if you're like low on health or something. The automated pathing is going to be primarily used for enemy navigation. And again, I'm not concerned with the bugs currently in it, because enemies can only move one tile towards the closest enemy at the end of every turn. So it's not like enemies are moving 14 spaces. So those bugs would probably never show up on the enemy. I'm definitely going to still work on this, obviously, because it is buggy in nature. So I do eventually need to fix and fine-tune this a little bit more. But currently, as it is, I'm pretty happy with where it is. And I'm going to sort of leave this for a while to not fix it for a while. The third aspect of the current build is the fair dice rolling simulation. Now, the cool thing about this is that these dice do not have predetermined values. This is done solely through physics. So the dice are generated with a random amount of torque in each of the 3 axes, and then those torque values make the dice rotate through space, which then the physics engine and physics materials allow the dice to bounce and move and whatnot. And the cool thing about this, what I meant by fair, is that these dice actually are similar to real world dice in the sense that it has an equal chance to land on any of the faces. And I actually kept track of this by running a simulation of about 1,000 iterations, and kept track of the average running, which was 3.5 plus or minus 0.1, which is exactly what you want for a fair dice in real life. The real value was like 3.6, but I'm saying plus or minus 1 because I ran a couple simulations, and obviously it's not going to be precisely a certain number. But in real life, the expected value of a 6-sided die should be 3.5. That should be the average value of using the dice. So that's something that's very important to this game, because a lot of the actions that the player will do with combat and using certain cards and using certain gear and other aspects require rolling dice. So it's good to have a foundational fair dice system in the game from the ground up. And with that, that wraps up this devlog. Thanks for watching and or listening. If you want to keep up to date with the game or anything Spenik Games related, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.